Morning all. You will have to forgive us if our tent goes over during the sermon, and I would appreciate our prayer warriors just praying for some stability here because it's making me a little bit nervous. The bricks are holding so far. If not, we'll get the children back out here to hold it up. That's right. We got four. There's 4 poles. It works perfectly. This is actually the kind of open air I'm used to. Back in Newfoundland, we don't have heat. We do have wind, and we have it in abundance. And so usually our open airs consist of a lot of clothespins on the edges of music stands. We're excited this morning. This is our 3rd week in our book of Ezra. We're looking at chapters 4, 5, and 6 today. I'm not going to read them all to you, but the bonus part is that if you get bored during the sermon, you may feel free to just read the story. So you have to decide if Ezra or Lieutenant Rebecca are more exciting to you this morning, and you can do whatever you want. But we're going to talk about opposition today. We're going to talk about what do we do as Christians based on what the people of Israel did as Israelites when we face opposition to what God is calling us to do. We know, we've been talking about this for 2 weeks now, we know that the people in the book of Ezra, the people of Israel had just come back from exile, and they were getting ready to rebuild their temple, rebuild their wall, rebuild their city, and become God's people, an independent nation again. But now we're going to talk about what happens because not everybody was excited about that happening. Not everybody wanted Israel to be Israel again. There were some people that were very happy with the circumstances that they had where Israel was exiled and the land was not theirs and it's all different. And we know, because we've lived in the world for any number of years, that whenever God calls someone to do something, there will be someone else that doesn't want it to happen. We know that that's coming. It's not a surprise. You've experienced it in your life when you felt really strongly that God wanted you to do something. And then someone else, somewhere else, someone you knew, someone on the TV, someone on the internet, because they're all very friendly people, said, no, you shouldn't do that. That's not a good idea. And you face that opposition. Because the thing about the world is it's very fickle. Whenever you choose to do something, there will be people that will love it and there will be people that will hate it. And depending on who happens to be in charge of wherever you are at the time that you say it, your decision may be very popular or very unpopular. And so we're going to talk about what did the people of Israel do during a span of 4 different kings when their decision to go back home and rebuild the temple went from popular to unpopular to really unpopular back to popular again. What did they do? How did they cope with that? And we're going to look at that and we're going to talk about what it means for us. Like I said, I'm not going to read you this whole section, but I'm going to start by reading from chapter 4, verse 1 is where we're going to start. This is just kind of introduces what we're talking about today. When the enemies of Judah and Benjamin heard that the exiles were building a temple for the Lord, the God of Israel, they came to Zerubbabel and to the heads of the families and said, let us help you build, because like you, we seek your God and have been sacrificing to him since the time of Esarhaddon, king of Assyria, who brought us here. But Zerubbabel, Joshua, and the rest of the heads of the families of Israel answered, you have no part with us in building a temple to our God. We alone will build it for the Lord, the God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, commanded us. Then the peoples around them set out to discourage the people of Judah and make them afraid to go on building. They bribed officials to work against them and frustrated their plans during the entire reign of Cyrus, king of Persia, and down to the reign of Darius, king of Persia. So like I said, we're looking at a span of several years where there were 4 different kings. And we're going to look at what did it look like for Israel. And when we started in the beginning with King Cyrus, and King Cyrus was the one that sent them home. Yes, absolutely. Take them home, build your temple. I fully support you, and I want you to offer sacrifices to your God on my behalf. That was Cyrus. Cyrus is in favor. And so it's a popular decision because it all kind of rode on who was the king at the time, how people felt about Israel. But even though it was popular, there were people that weren't really thrilled about it because those people happened to live where Israel was returning to. They didn't like the idea of having to move again. And so we have these people that come and they say, we want to help. We want to help you build your temple. But here's what happened to Israel. Here's what they knew from their history. In the past, they had not listened to God when he said, you need to be different. You need to be set apart. You need to separate your religion from the religions of the people around you. You need to worship me and only me. And everyone around them was polytheistic, worshipped many gods, and kind of wanted to go, well, your God is just one of many of our gods, and so we're happy to worship your God if you'll just say he's one of our gods. And they kind of went, I guess that sounds reasonable. Whatever. We'll just only worship him, but we agree that maybe there are other, like, we're not going to be crazy people here. And that decision made them popular in the geographic region, reasonably so. But it meant that they were denying the oneness of God. That they were saying that the thing we believe about God, one of the critical issues that we believe, is that he is the only true God. And they kind of went, well, we won't talk about that very much. We just know it's not popular. It's going to be okay. And that ended up with them being exiled. That's where that decision led them. The decision to say, we're going to worry about being popular here and having people like us, meant that in the end, after they broke their covenant with God, that they were exiled from their land. And so this time they knew. And this time they said no. Because we know who our God is, and we know what he's calling us to do, and he's calling us to be different and set apart. And so we can't have you come and be a part of building this temple, because you are not coming to be a part of the fullness of what it means to be the people of God. You are not going to come and join up. You just want to kind of be a part of what King Cyrus thinks is okay. And so we can't start there. We can't start from the place of saying we're going to worry more about what the people next door to us think than what God has told us to do. And so they had this opportunity during their time of popularity to become everybody's friend, to do what everybody wanted them to do. And they said no. Because what they knew and what we know, what you know in your heart of hearts, is that while opposition is problematic, popularity can be even more so. Because if I allow myself to worry about being popular, to worry about what the people around me will think, then I can allow myself to be swayed away from what God has called me to do. And so in their time of popularity, they said, this is what God has called us to do, and we can't do what you're asking. And so then the people around them started to oppose the rebuilding of the temple. And through the reign of Cyrus and the reign of Xerxes, they basically just tried to sabotage everything they were doing. They were bribing officials, they were doing everything, they were being a little intimidating, they were kind of bullying and harassing them in the area just to try and get them to stop. When that didn't work, during the reign of the third king during this story, Artaxerxes, they sent a letter. The governors in the area sent a letter to the king. Said, "O king, O wise and mighty king," this is my paraphrase, you can read it yourself. "O king, these people that are rebuilding their temple and then their wall and then their city and then their power, they have a history of rebellion against the king. And if you let them do this, then you will have no hold in this area of the world. They will rebel against you, they will take it over, and they will be an enemy to you. So, king, you should stop them now. Check your records. Go back and look and see what the people of Israel have been in history." And so the king gets this letter. He has someone check the records, because kings don't check their own records. He has someone check the records. And he says, yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, seems reasonable. Thank you for looking out for me. And he said, go tell them to stop. Tell them to stop building. I don't need rebellion in the Trans-Euphrates. I don't need it. So tell them to stop. And so the government officials go, and what it says is it compelled them by force to stop. This is kind of the down tools or we're going to shoot you kind of situation. And so they put their tools down and they stop. And during the rest of that king's reign, there was no work done on the temple. So they went from popular to really unpopular. Then a new king came, King Darius. And during the reign of King Darius, God sent prophets to the people of Israel. Prophets are people that tell us what God wants us to know. And so they sent prophets to the people of Israel, and God sent prophets and said, start it up. Pick up your tools, we're going again. So again, the Rebecca McGee paraphrase. It doesn't say that in the Bible, just go with me. We're starting again. And so they start building. And our governors come back and they say, who gave you permission to do this? Who said this was okay? All right, tell me what you're doing. Tell me who told you could do it, and tell me who's in charge here. Give me your names, because we're going to write a letter to the king. As they're flexing their governor muscles. We're writing a letter. It's coming. And the Bible says that God was with the people of Israel that day. And so they told them, here's what you can tell the king from us. I'm going to pull it up for you, and I'm going to read it. If the wind doesn't get the better of me here. All right. We're in chapter 5 of the book of Ezra. This starts in verse 11. So this is a portion of the letter that these governors wrote to the king. The governor says, "O king, we went and we saw that they're building the temple." Remember, this is a new king now. "And here's what they said when we questioned them on it. This is the answer they gave us. We are the servants of the God of heaven and earth, and we are rebuilding the temple that was built many years ago, one that a great king of Israel built and finished. But because our ancestors angered the God of heaven, he gave them into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar, the Chaldean, king of Babylon, who destroyed this temple and deported the people to Babylon. However, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Babylon, King Cyrus issued a decree to rebuild this house of God. He even removed from the temple of Babylon the gold and silver articles from the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple in Jerusalem and brought to the temple in Babylon. Then King Cyrus gave them to a man named Sheshbazzar, whom he had appointed governor, and told him, "Take these articles and go and deposit them in the temple in Jerusalem, and rebuild the house of God on its site." So this Sheshbazzar came and laid the foundations of the house of God in Jerusalem. From that day to the present, it has been under construction, but is not yet finished. Now, if it pleases the king, let a search be made in the royal archives of Babylon to see if King Cyrus did in fact issue a decree to rebuild this house of God in Jerusalem. Let the king send us his decision in this matter. Go check the records again, O good King Darius. So he checked the records again. Turns out, what do you know? King Cyrus did send them home with all the gold that they had taken away from them when they were exiled to Babylon. And so King Darius says, fair enough. Let them build their temple. Not only that, not only let them build their temple, we're going to pay for it. We're going to send money so that the work doesn't have to stop. Send them whatever they need so that the work doesn't have to stop. And if anyone opposes this temple, execute them. It says a little more colorfully. Execute them. If anyone opposes the rebuilding of this temple, execute them. So we've gone from Cyrus said, yeah, go ahead, go home, rebuild your temple. Here's your stuff. Go ahead and go home. To Artaxerxes says, down tools. And now Darius is going, if anyone opposes the building of this temple, we will execute them because we definitely need this temple to be built. And so in the space of 4 kings, Israel has gone from, yeah, they're doing okay, to, nope, can't do any of our worship, to, we're getting people executed now. It's been a roller coaster ride for Israel. So the question is, they knew in the beginning what God was calling them to do. And through this time of popularity and oppression and popularity and oppression, as the roller coaster has gone up and down, what did the people of Israel do? And as we take that and we look at that, we think about what can we do? We're called to be God's holy people in the world. We're called to be God's army in the world. We're called to be different. And so when it's popular and when it's unpopular, when we are popular, when we are oppressed, when we are persecuted and when we are praised, what should we do? How can we act when everything rides on the opinion of others? Because that's what we're looking at here. Everything for Israel rode on the opinion of the king about what they were doing. Whether or not they would be allowed to continue, whether or not it would be a danger to them, how they would be perceived by the world. It was all about the opinion of that king. So here's the story for the morning. This is a story that we heard a while ago in a class that my husband took, and he's probably told it to some of you before. It's a good story, and it illustrates the point really, really effectively. There was a young man who wanted to be holy. He wanted to be the person that God was calling him to be. And so he set out and he found an old monk. And he said, "Sir, I want to learn how to be holy. You are doing so well at being so holy. Will you teach me?" He says, Sure, come see me in the morning." So the young man comes back. The monk says, "Okay, first lesson. See that cemetery over there?" "Yes, sir." "Go to the cemetery, and all day, until sunset, I want you to curse the dead." "Sorry?" "Yes, I want you to curse the dead." "You mean like call them names and stuff?" "Yep, go, curse the dead. I will see you tomorrow morning. Go curse the dead, see you in the morning." Okay, it's a weird thing to do, but the young man goes to the cemetery, kind of thinks about it for a little bit, and kind of goes, well, maybe it's like a test. Like, this is a ridiculous thing to do, but maybe the monk is testing me to see if I will do what he asks. So he's like watching from behind a headstone somewhere, and he just wants to see if I'll do it. So he does it. And from sunrise to sunset, this young man curses the dead, calls them every name he can think of. "The earth was better now that you're gone. I wish you had never been born. Your mother was kind of ugly." Everything that he can think of to curse these dead folks. Goes home, comes back in the morning. "Sir, I did it. I cursed the dead. I did it all day." "You did it all day. All day you cursed the dead." "Yes, I did. Absolutely. I cursed them really well too. I mean, they regret that they ever saw me coming." "That's excellent. Excellent. Good job." "Okay, sir, what do you want me to do today?" "Well, today, you're going to go back to the same cemetery." "Okay, great. You want me to curse the dead again?" No, I don't want you to curse the dead again. Today, I want you to praise the dead. Praise them. Yep. Go back to the cemetery, praise the dead, sunrise to sunset. I'll see you here again tomorrow morning." All right. It's a weird thing. But again, he's kind of in this place of like, I don't understand. But he's probably watching, just like he's watching to see how many times I'll do this before I stop listening. So he goes back and he praises the dead all day. Thinks of every nice thing he can think of to say about somebody. "We're so lucky that you ever graced the earth to walk upon it in our town. You did so many good things. Your mother was a lovely woman." Everything he can think to say. And so the next morning he goes back to the monk again. He said, "I did it. I praised them. I praised them up and down. I looked up things about them so that I could say specific praises about each of them. I did everything I could do." He says, "Fantastic. That's wonderful. Now, when you praised them, what did the dead say?" "Nothing." "Interesting. What did they do?" "Nothing." "And when you cursed them 2 days ago, what did they say?" "Nothing." Son, if you want to be holy, if you want to be the person that God has called you to be like the dead. Be like the dead when people praise you and change nothing. Be like the dead when people curse you and change nothing. Because if we want to be the people He's called us to be, if we want to be holy, if we want to be set apart, the people that we are supposed to be because God is calling us to it, then when people on earth praise us or curse us, it can't change what God has called us to do. When the people of Israel faced popularity and persecution, when the king loved them and when the king hated them, when they were told to continue, when they were told to stop, they knew through it all what God was calling them to do. To be His holy people set apart and rebuild His temple. And so when they were praised and when they were cursed, because you'll remember through the reign of 3 separate kings, they were persecuted by all the people around them. They were harassed. Officials were bribed to get them to stop. They didn't stop until the gun was to their head. For 3 kings, they continued in persecution and oppression. And when finally, during the reign of King Darius, they were told they could start again, they were supported by the government. What did they do? They did what they had been doing all along and did what God was calling them to do. And in the beginning, when they were offered the opportunity to be popular, to have the people around them join together with them as one big happy family, they remembered what God had called them to do. They understood what was really being offered. Because temptation doesn't always look bad. Sometimes it looks all right. It looks easier. And so if we're going to be the people God has called us to be, if we're going to do what God has called us to do, I don't know the specifics of what those issues are for you, what God is calling you to in the world. But we live in the southern United States. It's pretty popular to be a Christian. Most of the time. But if we're going to be God's holy people, then when they praise us and when they curse us, when they say the Salvation Army is a beautiful, wonderful organization, we're so glad for what you do, and when they say, I can't believe that you would do that, be like the dead. And remember that the only voice that matters is the voice of our Heavenly Father calling us to a purpose. So before we close today with our benediction, we're going to pray. And we're going to pray for the strength, the power from God, that we could be like the dead.